Blue, good. We got blue over here. Let's call this meeting to order. The Oakland County Board of Commissioners Planning and Building Committee. Today is Tuesday, September 18th. Could we have a roll call, please?
Crawford.
Here.
Gilroy.
Here.
Dwyer.
Here.
Teets is not here yet. Jackson. Here. Wiper.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Could you please join in the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Could we have approval of the previous minutes? Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passed. Could we have approval of today's agenda? Are there any corrections or deletions?
Move for approval.
Moved by approval, Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed. Any public comment today? Any members from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we move on to today's regular agenda. Item number 1 is the Water Resources Commissioner 2018 Lake Level Assessments for the Operation and Maintenance Resolution. Need a motion? Moved by Commissioner Dwyer, supported by Commissioner Jackson. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm Mike McMahon, Chief Engineer at the Water Resources Commissioner's Office over the Drain and Lake Maintenance Group. And this is Jeff Wilson. He's one of the engineers that work on the drains. And if you've been on the committee in the past, you know that we come annually with these requests for approval on assessments. The first one up here is our lake level assessments, and we operate and maintain 35 different lake level control structures that regulate the lake levels throughout the county. And we incur expenses. We have lake level techs that go out on a weekly basis, visit the sites usually once or twice depending on the need. And of course that's very weather dependent. And so to keep those in operational condition, they periodically require maintenance. We have a couple of them that we have pretty sizable assessments because we have ongoing projects, and we can touch on those if you care to have us talk a little bit about that. Probably the ones that stand out this year would be Duck Lake, and we've been working very closely with the homeowners association there. Duck Lake had a problem with their augmentation well. It had to be replaced. The old screen had gone bad, so a new well was drilled and a new pump installed, and that's back online now. And so we had talked to the homeowners association, and they were good with us doing the assessment in 1 year. So that's a sizable one. We also have the Oxbow Lake, which the outlet for that is a 72-inch C&P culvert that is in bad condition, and that's more work that's planned. We're going to go in and take a look at that and assess it and come up with a solution for making an improvement there. Pontiac Lake, there was a sinkhole behind the dam, and so we've done some investigation. We've hired a consultant to go out and do a report on the condition of the whole dam. It's one of our older ones, and they found some other issues. There's some water bubbling up that we're investigating. So there's probably going to be ongoing work there as well. In addition to that, the Upper Straits Lake is probably the largest, well, besides Duck Lake. Upper Straits, the dam is in a condition of not failure, but needing a lot of work. We do triennial inspections, and we submit those to the state, and they have really pressed us to do something. We're meeting with both the Upper Straits Lake, and the Middle and Lower. The level between those is only a couple of tenths difference, and so we're looking at either replacing that dam or removing it and combining those districts. So there's been a lot of study done. There's a lot of engineering that's been accomplished already. No final decision has been made, but to get the fund out of deficit, we're assessing $146,500 this year. Jeff, any other ones that you want to comment on?
We had the, let's see here. No, actually, never mind. You touched on all. Thank you.
Oh.
Okay. Unless you have questions about any of the others.
Any questions? And what's the useful life of a dam? I mean, you know, sometimes they say bridges are about 100, 120 years. I mean, a lot of these dams are getting aged.
Yeah, it depends, because the construction of these dams all vary from one to the other. Some are as simple as little box structures with overflow, you know, that's a fixed weir. Others, like the Pontiac Dam, is a very large structure, then it involves an earth embankment and, you know, a gate system. So some can be a lot more involved than others, but I would say in general, probably 50 years before, you know, you have to go make some major improvements.
And on that dam you were talking about removing, if you remove the dam, it's now going, that gets political on neighbors who were sitting on some waterfront, and it's
Right.
gonna create a river.
Well, no, I mean, because the two are, the upper straits and the middle lower are connected now by this waterway where the dam is, it really wouldn't make a lot of effect there. You'd have to do a study to determine what the optimum level is that would work for both. But we don't even have the buy-in yet from both districts. We just think for as much as the dam is gonna cost to replace, it might make sense to at least consider that.
The water level behind the dam versus just downstream of it is only a few tenths. So
Okay.
as my hands are looking, that really is about what the difference is.
What is the price of a dam?
I think they're estimating about $1.5 million.
Any other questions from what I asked? Let's call the roll.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Jackson. Yes. Whitebird.
Yes. So
Motion
we need, that passed. We need a motion for direct referral to finance.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed. Thank you. Item number 2 is the Water Resources Commissioner 2018 Chapter 4 Drain Maintenance Assessment Resolution. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Do I need a motion? Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Dwyer.
So our Chapter 4 drains, just as a reminder, are generally the older, more agricultural drains. Chapter 4 referring to Chapter 4 in the Michigan Drain Code. And those districts are comprised of all the benefiting property owners and are assessed directly to the individual properties, versus our Chapter 20 drains, which we're not talking about today,
Mhm.
where they're assessed to the communities at large. They do involve some at-large assessments to the communities. Again, generally, compared to, say, last year, our assessments are up. We've begun a couple of new initiatives. One is sort of driven by the DEQ, and that is to do catch basin cleaning. Catch basins are the inlets where water enters the system, and the inlet portion generally has a catch basin, which is a depressed bottom to the structure that catches sediment and helps it to filter it out before it goes into the system and out to the discharge point, and then they can be cleaned. Jeff's been working on that and has set up a rotation where we'll be doing all the catch basins every, is it 7?
6 years.
6 years. And in addition to that, we're taking the initiative to look at some of these older drains, larger pipes that run under major roads, trying to be a little more proactive and head off some of the emergencies that crop up when infrastructure is not maintained. So we've got some CCTV inspections planned for many of the drains. Anything else, Joe?
Well, CCTV, that's referring to actually putting a camera through these pipes and getting a detailed inspection on them. And we're talking pipes that range from 12 inches to, say, 48 inches. And beyond that, there's more specialized ways of inspecting them.
Any questions? Commissioner Jackson?
Thank you. So without this maintenance that's required by the DEQ, would it cause like potential for residential backups and flooding of people's homes?
Typically, the catch basin cleanings would not, but what happens is that depressed bottom in the structure where the water enters the system, once it fills up, the water just goes right through. It kind of, it makes the catch basin sump kind of irrelevant, and so anything coming into the system gets washed right through instead of being caught there at the inlet. So it wouldn't generally cause backups unless you get a lot of debris.
But in following up on the inspection, the camera inspections would catch a lot of that stuff.
You mean referring to stuff that ends up making its way into the line?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, but a lot of it ends up just pushing through the system. And so that's why the DEQ themselves has become involved. It actually alters ecosystems downstream. So as these things make their way onto rivers and lakes, that's the type of the sediment that's in there can affect wildlife. So they've really statewide been pushing for more and more proactive cleaning because you're right, if you don't do anything, sometimes everything functions just fine in terms of flooding, but it's the things that we don't see that they would like to be addressed more.
Commissioner McGilvern.
How did you come to 6 years on the cleaning cycle?
Generally, there's some statewide practices out there of, say, about 5 years being a cycle for these types of things. In this county and how we break things out and how our normal inspections occur, which are every 3 years, we thought it would be more beneficial to do it every 6 because we are tracking that sediment as it rebuilds every time that we inspect it. So we thought something that lines up 3 and 6 would make more sense than 3 and 5.
And we may end up adjusting that based on what we find. If the sump in the bottom of the catch basin is not filling up with sediment as quickly as we think, then we can extend that schedule out.
The reason I ask is a lot of local municipalities do it every 2 years. And that's why, catch basins I'm talking, which I'm sure collects more junk than a drain out in the middle of a field someplace. But
Yeah, that's true, and they're of different depths, and as you get into more urban areas, you're dealing with different things that are going in there as well. So you're right, there are differences around communities depending on where you're going. We kind of put ours together from a survey of road commissions and drain commissions throughout the state to kind of determine that number.
But as Jeff said, as we do our 3-year inspection of the structure itself, we look at the integrity of the structure to see if it needs any repairs. One of the things they are doing is measuring the sediment. And so if we see that a catch basin is full, we can at that point always send a Vactor out to clean it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. Is this, and the way you said it, it's the 6-year cycle, is that a new policy or what was it?
Correct, yeah, it's a proactive cleaning approach. The old policy was to monitor it, and after it reached a certain depth in the sump, at that point it would be cleaned out, but the DEQ has really pressed on, no, go to a more regular cleaning cycle than that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Let's call roll.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Dwyer,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Whiteford.
Yes. That passed. This one also needs a motion for direct referral to finance.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed. Item number 3 is the Water Resources Commissioner. This is 2018 Chapter 18 Drain Maintenance Assessment Resolution. Need motion? Commissioner Dwyer, supported by Commissioner Jackson. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Morning.
So Chapter 18 again refers to Chapter 18 in the drain code. These drains are right now only utilized, these type of drains are only utilized in West Bloomfield Township and Oakland Township. And by ordinance, all new developments going in, their drainage system becomes a Chapter 18 drain. So these tend to be a little bit newer than the Chapter 4 drains. That being said, we are also initiating a catch basin cleaning program and starting some closed circuit television inspection of some of the pipes that are under major roads. Because even here we've had some emergency type situations, and it's far less expensive to do it proactively and take care of situations. Any particular ones, Jeff, you want to comment on?
Well, before I comment on any of them, I would point out as a whole as well, these ones, they generally handle subdivision drainage. And so you see in a subdivision they have ponds, and the ponds provide flood control. So where it outlets from the pond, it then goes onto a natural water course. And the Chapter 4s are often directly connected. So with these ones, they go to directly connected to the water course. With these ones, they connect to a pond first, providing flood control. The pond fills up and then slowly releases out into the water course. And so the sediment in the catch basins on these ones, rather than making their way onto, say, a stream or a river, they're actually just making their way into their own pond if they're not clean. So those ponds end up filling up, and those ponds need maintenance. And so these ones tend to have a pond maintenance, dollars dedicated to that as well within them. Regarding individual assessment districts here, we have had a few emergency repairs that have occurred over the last year. I'll refer you to the Chelsea Park drain, where we had a pipe collapse in there, and then also the Greenpoint Condos drain. We also had some issues with some structures in there where a few of them had failed prematurely, and so we had to do a few structure repairs on those.
Any questions? Commissioner Jackson?
So, Chelsea Park and Greenpoint condos are located where, in what city?
Those are West Bloomfield, I believe.
Yes, those are both West Bloomfield.
Okay, around 14 and a half.
Greenpoint is, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, did that have anything to do with, do you remember all the water problems we had last year there? And where they had to boil water and?
No,
everything
that was
there?
not related to that. So that was the Great Lakes Water Authority pipe that you're referring to. And yeah, they ended up having a break in the water main. And so that was a drinking water
Okay.
situation. This one is related purely to the stormwater catch basins and manholes.
Thank you. Just
And
remember, I know people living in both of those developments, so then when you mention them, I'm like, okay, thank you.
any other questions? And on these, do you work with, do sometimes homeowners associations deal with their ponds before they get you involved, or is it?
Generally, we try to get them to come directly to us. Sometimes they do, but we would rather know what's going on out there. I mean, sometimes they're doing aesthetic improvements to them, and sometimes what they think is, not affecting anything ends up doing something to their flood control measures and can end up causing problems in the future. And so I really encourage them to just call us before they do anything on the ponds. We're fine with permitting them to, say, install fountains or, do some landscaping on the grounds that come down to us. But sometimes they don't tell us, and they make changes to the water elevation, or they plug something off and raise the pond for aesthetic reasons. And now they're affecting flood control, they're affecting things downstream, they're affecting their own development and risking flooding. And so I really encourage them to always come through me if they're ever gonna pursue anything with their pond.
Do they know? Is the word out that contact the Water Resource Commissioner's office first?
Some of them have a great understanding of it. I mean, so when they establish, say, a site condo, that's spelled out in the condo documents. Some people don't really pay much attention to that. Occasionally they get mailings from us. They also get the assessments, so it says, hey, you're in a drainage district. If they call the township immediately knows, hey, that's a WRC drainage district, contact the WRC. But you're right, sometimes things slip through, sometimes they just don't know. And that tends to be how we get some problems with the ponds, when people just truly don't know. And, over the years, these associations, they just continue to do projects on the ponds and never really know that they're affecting something that's there to protect them.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Let's call the roll.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGillivray.
Yes.
Wyper.
Yes. Okay. This one also needs a motion for direct referral to finance. Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is also the Water Resources Commissioner, but this is a different department. This is the interjurisdictional property insurance agreement with the Village of Lake Orion. Good morning. I need a motion. Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGillivray.
Good morning. My name is Tim Prince, Chief Manager for Water Resource Commissioner's Office. with me today is Kelsey Cook. She's our senior attorney. So we operate and maintain the Village of Lake Orion sanitary sewer system. And what we're here today for is recommending adoption of Lake Orion Village property, Lake Orion Village property insurance agreement, which would allow us to provide property insurance for the sites within Lake Orion Village. So I don't know, Kelsey, if you have anything else to add?
Sure. So traditionally, our office has provided or had the county obtain this coverage on behalf of Lake Orion Village, and then the cost for the coverage is paid out of Lake Orion Village's sewer enterprise fund. And so this interjurisdictional property agreement just puts that practice in writing. It gives the county an insurable interest in case a claim is ever made. This document will be there to show the relationship. And so, as Tim mentioned, it's for their sewer system property, and I believe it involves 16 sewer lift stations located throughout the village.
Any questions? And we had some of these last time, and you told us that sometimes the village or the town can't afford insurance at our rate. Is that?
That's right. So due to the number of assets that the county insures, the premium for these smaller communities is much more affordable when it just all goes through the county rather than trying to obtain coverage on their own.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions? Let's call roll.
Jackson.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Whitebird.
Yes. Not bad. Thank you. Item number 5 is Water Resources Commissioner Charter Township of Oakland Sewer System Operation and Maintenance Agreement. Moved by Commissioner Dwyer, supported by Commissioner Jackson.
Good morning again.
Mm-hmm.
So we operate and maintain the Oakland Township sanitary sewer system. And in this case, we're recommending adoption of Oakland Township Sanitary Sewer System Operations and Maintenance Agreement. So I think it was probably about approximately a year ago, we came to the board and we got approval for operations and maintenance of the water system. And there was a transfer of property, and then we had the agreement executed for operations and maintenance of the system. So this one's sort of been hanging out there for a while, and so we finally sort of got the township to pass the resolution so that we can now bring this agreement back to the board.
Right. So this is similar to other agreements you've seen, as Tim mentioned. This operations and maintenance agreement for Oakland Township's sewer system is much more detailed than the contract that they've had in the past. It specifies that the county is operating their system on a nonprofit basis, that all the expenses incurred by the county are going to be paid through system revenue, which is deposited into their enterprise fund held by the county for the benefit of Oakland Township. It sets forth the scope of services that we provide and general liability and public officials liability insurance provisions. So the county is protected in operating and maintaining Oakland Township's system. The township may also elect to become a named insured on that insurance policy. They have not decided to do so yet. They're still considering that. But if they do elect to do so, they can pay a premium and be a named insured and receive the same protections against claims that the county has right now.
Any questions? The one we had that came through the last committee meeting, the township or the village did opt to get on.
Correct. Yeah, Oakland Township's still just considering that option at this time. So the contract language allows for them at any point to become a name insured on the policy and if they pay that premium.
Okay. Any other? Let's call the roll.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Whitebird.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is Parks and Recreation Commission residential lease amendment, the Oakland Urban Growers at Waterford Oaks. Need a motion. Motion by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGilvray. Good morning.
Good morning, Sue Wells, manager.
Mike Dowling, Chief of Park Facilities Maintenance and Dental.
Commissioners, if I could have your patience, this agenda item as well as the next agenda item sort of go hand in hand. So if I'm going back and forth to these two agenda items, it's because we have to do one and the other. Oakland County Parks purchased land at Waterford Oaks in 2009. That included a residence and greenhouses. They're commonly known as the Ernst greenhouses, even though we've had them since 2009, and the Ernst residence. So, since 2009, for 5 years, Oakland County Parks operated those greenhouses with the intent that we would grow our own flowers, as well as had a community garden program. After the 5 years of evaluation, we found out that we were not best suited to grow our own flowers, and it was not cost productive for us to do so. We then sent out an RFP, and we received a bid for Recovery Park, and they operated the greenhouses until they moved to Detroit to a much larger site. Our last effort was in 2006 to send out an RFP for operations of the greenhouse or deconstruction of the greenhouse. We did receive a bid from Urban Growers for the operation of the greenhouse. At that time, we negotiated, we being staff as well as commission, negotiated with them on this lease. It was executed and the lease would begin in October 2017. Part of that original lease included utilities at the greenhouse would be responsible for Urban Growers. However, the bill would come to Oakland County Parks and we would rebuild them quarterly. Also, they would be responsible for a $10,000 security deposit, $10,000 security deposit, of which we do have. The tenant would be responsible for any improvements to the site as long as it is pre-approved by staff. The original residential lease would be that the utilities would be in the name of, would be paid by Oakland Urban Growers, and the rent would be started October 2017 with a 2% increase each year. All maintenance of the house would be done by park staff, very similar to our other leases that we have on residents. They wanted this resident because the operation of the greenhouse was a 24/7 operation, and they felt it was best that a staff person was on site in case a motor would go at the greenhouses in the evening and they needed to get help or repair it immediately. The lease is for a 10-year term with an automatic 10-year renewal. Now to our current situation. In July, it was brought to our attention by Urban Growers that their cash flow was not what they had anticipated it to be. One reason for that was because the lease started in October, there was not a strong growing season to start out with until the beginning of the season, as well as they also had to put approximately $200,000 into the project for capital improvement. It's a hydroponic greenhouse. They do have clients throughout Oakland County, very high-end restaurants and country club. And they did go to our executive committee to ask for some sort of arrangement that could be made where they could defer payment on the greenhouse. So the major points of the lease amendments are as follows. The utilities of all properties would be put into Oakland Urban Growers' name. We would no longer have utilities in Oakland County Parks names. All past utilities would be paid within 14 days of the execution of this amendment if approved, less the $10,000 of the security deposit. Currently, they owe $22,000 in past utilities. For the last 3 quarters, we have not received the 4th quarter bill yet. So that will be coming in a couple weeks. The arrangement would be that all repairs would be their responsibility. Monthly lease payments would be deferred for 3 years, and rent is increased the following 3 years until Oakland County Parks is paid back. Oakland Urban Growers would also be responsible solely for repairing the roofs on the greenhouses. There are 4 greenhouses where the roofs need to be completely repaired, and they would be responsible for that. So I bring before you 2 lease amendments that were approved by our Parks Commission and recommended to you.
Questions? Commissioner McGilvery and then Commissioner Dwyer.
I just want to make sure, the $22,000 that's owed in back utilities now will be paid before we sign this lease, is that correct?
It will be paid 14 days after the execution of the lease.
So it's afterwards.
It would be after.
And we're pretty sure that that's going to be taken care of. Because the reason I ask is we only have a $10,000 security, and now you're talking $22,000 that they owe. You know, I mean, we could get stuck holding the, you know, the whole mess here, you know. So I was just curious.
Commissioner Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It sounds like it's a loss for the county to me. Can you explain a little further why we're doing this? What's the benefits to the county? Because I don't see any, quite frankly, any benefits at all.
The benefits to the county, it gives the opportunity to utilize the greenhouses. Historically, when we operated.
But it's going to be at a loss, I assume.
That's correct.
So why are we doing it?
We're doing it to utilize a resource that's not utilized right now.
There is some educational benefit with hydroponic growing in the area. It's one of the first hydroponic growing systems in the local area, so there is some benefit of education of, you know, residents on it. We do have in the agreement opportunities built in for them to host events to kind of show the hydroponic farming systems that they're working on. So there is some community benefit there. Other than that,
Okay, thank you.
Are they doing educational things there? Has there been any so far?
we've hosted a commission meeting through the greenhouses at this point, and we haven't had any plans for future ones at this point either. So.
And it's gone through the Parks and Rec Commission. We have 2 members here. Was there any issues, Commissioner Crawford or Commissioner McGilvery? I mean, that's.
The only thing I can say is the urban growers are struggling, you know, trying to get their business off the ground here. And this was our way of trying to help them. You know, they requested it, and this is what we came up with. Now, there was a lot of negotiations involved to get to this point. The good part is we're helping a business out. The benefit for us doing something like this is that if not, then that whole operation is gonna be sitting vacant, just costing us to maintain whatever we have to do or tear down the greenhouses or whatever might happen. So at least we're kind of even at this point. So, and that's the way I look at it. That's why I voted for it on the Parks Commission, and that's why I'll support it today.
Was it unanimous at the Parks Commission?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
What, the place that was before the called
Recovery Park?
Recovery Park, were they current on their lease and had no issues?
I have to look back at that. My recollection is yes, they were, but we had some approvals that we had to get through, and plus their facility in Detroit was more palatable than ours. They had quite a large area down by Eastern Market that they could develop with greenhouses and focus their energies to basically those employing the employee challenged individuals is a way to say that. And that's what their focus was, to put them in the garden industry and do that. And they thought that Detroit would be a better location for all of that. So we moved on to this in 2016 to do the RFP to see if we can get someone else or deconstruct to see if there's other. There's universities that may be interested in the greenhouses themselves. They're relocatable. They could come in, deconstruct, and relocate them on other grounds. And I know there's been some interest in the recent that there was for that. But at this point, we do have a contractual obligation with Open Urban Growers, and to try to work with them to make their business successful as much as we can, as much as the commission can, and lawfully.
Commissioner Jackson.
So, Oakland Urban Growers, do they mainly just grow flowers?
They specialize in real high-end microgreens, lettuces, things that can be turned around quite a bit. I'm a landscape architect. When I walk into, there's a lot of neat, in my opinion, neat things going on there from a hydroponic standpoint. It has soilless hydroponic system, and it's constant water flowing in that facility. And they sell those. They harvest it, replant it, and then within a short period of time, I think they have like a 20-day turnaround from seed to distribution. And they get it to Andiamos, a bunch of local restaurants. It's kind of a neat operation when you see that stuff. They've tried other products such as tomatoes, flowers, squash flowers for decorations and stuff. But a lot of those things don't have the turnaround that they're looking for to create the cash flow.
Well, speaking of turnaround cash flow, do you potentially see them growing marijuana? It's hydroponic?
It's in the lease that they cannot.
Commissioner Crawford.
Yeah, as Sue stated, they started at kind of a bad time of the year, therefore had a cash flow issue. And that's why we're trying to work with them and help them get on their feet. And it does provide services to some restaurants, and it looks like it could be a going business, but they've just had difficulty with cash flow. They have spent some money on refurbishing the greenhouses, which is all to our benefit. So the alternative would be to perhaps find another renter, or to just let it sit and get into disrepair. So I think that what we've worked out is a pretty good compromise, and there's some safeguards in there. The only issue I have, same as Gary had, is they owe $22,000 and they don't have to pay it until after it. I'd prefer to see maybe $12,000 of that up front before we sign a lease, and then we would have the $10,000 security deposit to fall back on after the lease was signed. So it's just a suggestion. If there's any thought on doing that, I would support that. But otherwise, it's the best alternative we have.
Commissioner Dwyer, then Commissioner McGovern.
I'm not going to support it. I see so many problems with this. I think that you should go back and look at other areas as far as people that could really benefit the county rather than taking this risk. I think even in the list and the maintenance that you talked about that we're going to provide, to me, I just can't support it. Thank you.
Commissioner McGovern?
Yeah, just to comment on the 22,000 compared to the 10,000 security. It's written right in the lease that 22,000 has to be paid within 14 days. So the lease would be null and void at the end of 14 days if they don't pay it, so we can cancel the lease at that point.
Commissioner Jackson.
Commissioner Dwyer mentioned, county benefit, and we do work with the, Michigan State University Extension, and we have programs where we are trying to help teach our children agriculture business. Is there any potential use for that to kind of balance it out as far as what we're doing, as far as giving them these breaks?
I think their goal is to have the education component as strong as the sales component. However, they've been, starting to get off the ground with, what they have. I know that they've reached out to Oakland schools, they've gone to the county market. We have a good relationship with Michigan Extension at the market, and I don't see why there can't be a reason for them not to be involved with Michigan State Extension there, to some degree.
Okay. But there really hasn't been any type of collaboration there?
Not at this time, not to this time.
When you mentioned the Eastern Market facility and training disadvantaged people, maybe we could do something like that to make it of a better use to the school district. But it's a straight up retail now, it's a retail operation, they're a for-profit business, and we have a lease with them.
Correct.
I think there's potential for so much more since we're working with them.
Commissioner Dwyer here to follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just again, you got two agreements here. You've got one for the system operations maintenance agreement, and you got the residential. You got two separate for the same price, right? I mean, if you kind of put them both together, item 5 and 6.
That's correct.
There's different legal
So
requirements.
what is the residential area as far as the lease? What does that entail? I'm not clear on that.
The residential lease is the house that's on the property, and that's the only thing that it is. The other one is the greenhouse.
So they get the house too,
They pay for the house.
but that's part of the total agreement?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up, when it was before recovery, so it was sitting there, and you did a study on what it was costing and deconstruct, and what was that?
The first 5 years, we took on the initiative to, we saw possibilities for the park system to grow native plants, to grow our own annual flowers. We plant approximately 1,500 flats of flowers park-wide. And so there was we got 35,000 square foot of greenhouse space. Let's try to do that. Let's try to grow our native plants. The bottom line come down to is that for 35,000 square feet, we don't have the need for that much plant material to grow to make that the productive thing. On top of that, we were doing it with part-time resources. It's a 24/7 operation. So a full-time resource is really kind of a need to continue that operation, try to expand it as far as native plant materials. So we also looked at programming with the community garden, indoor community garden that we ran from, I believe it was beginning of October through April, 7-month time frame. And we charged for that. It wasn't a free community garden because it was a heated space. And when we looked at the numbers coming back from that, we charged approximately $150 per 6x10 garden space. It's great social opportunities, great community growth. You come in, you meet, there's several employees that took benefit with that. They went over there on their lunch hours and did their gardening. But when we looked at the cost recovery of those for that space, just that space, we were looking at about a $400+ cost expense for those each garden area. So when you're only getting $150 in revenue and it's costing over $400 to do that, it really wasn't cost effective either. And the other spaces sitting idle. The whole greenhouse since 2014, 15 has sat idle, and just sitting there was a cost of about $45,000 to $50,000 because you have to maintain heat within those facilities because you need to melt the snow off the roof. If you don't melt the snow off the roof, then you get failure in the plastic. So you have to maintain at least a 45-degree temperature in it. And it costs us about $45,000 to $50,000 annually to maintain heaters, to maintain the space, and to keep it there. So we were looking at alternatives to really try to utilize that from a county benefit, and it just wasn't cost effective. We ended up in the bottom line.
And what was the deconstruct cost? Did you have that?
We were actually hoping and looking for folks that would be interested in deconstructing and moving it to another site for minimal costs. We would probably have into it site restoration costs, but we were trying to see what the RFP would gel out with deconstructing offsite.
We've had some interest from other nonprofit agencies that would be interested in a greenhouse.
Any other questions?
Have
Mr.
you
Dwyer.
have you ever considered selling the property?
Selling the property?
Yes.
No, because we just purchased it in 2009.
And it's part of our preservation, because there's some wetland areas in association with the property. So it helps us with managing those wetlands and everything. So one of our, when we purchased it, it's adjacent to Waterford Oaks. So that adjacency was really the means for why we were going after the property. And we did think that there was a good opportunity with the greenhouses at the time too.
One of the original reasons we purchased it was a possible new entrance to Waterford. Waterford has different entrances, and it would maybe a good location to enter, to put in a contact station and a better staging area. So long range, those greenhouses and home would not be there.
And that purchase in 2009 was during the crash. What was it? Was it a reasonable price
It was very reasonable.
because of the crash? I mean,
And there were some restrictions on it, and Mr. Ernst was ready to sell and wanted to sell to people that he knew.
all right. Well, any other questions? I'll listen to our Parks and Rec Commission. We looked and it passed unanimously there. So let's call the roll.
Crawford,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Dwyer,
No.
Jackson,
Yes.
Yeah.
and Wyper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So was on item number 6? You kind of covered both. I'll call item number 7 now. It's the Parks and Recreation Commission Greenhouse Lease Amendment, Oakland Urban Growers, Waterford Oaks. Moved by Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Good morning again.
Good morning.
And so this we've covered both of this.
Both of them, yes.
Identical issue between the residential and the greenhouse. It's the
Greenhouse.
same request.
Yes.
Defer the rent for 3 years. They're gonna pay this Edison bill or the electric bill within
Yeah.
14 days execution.
Yes.
And you mentioned something, we still have, we have 10,000 security deposit, but we're still gonna maintain the security deposit. They're not using the security deposit for that Edison, are they?
Correct. We are going to maintain the security deposit.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to follow up on that from last time. Any other questions? Let's call the roll.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Dwyer,
No.
Jackson,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
And Wyper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 8 is facilities management, facilities maintenance and operations, the former animal shelter gazebo removal project. Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGilvray. Good morning.
Good morning. Art Holdsworth, Director of Facilities Management.
Good morning.
Larry Obrecht, resident.
Linda Moran, Pallium
And welcome Larry.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Larry Obrecht had, well, I'll tell you, he can explain better how he came across this, but I got an email one day from Larry and Jerry Poison about an opportunity And it relates to an old gazebo that we have up on the old animal shelter property on Brown Road. That gazebo had been donated to the county back in 2004, I believe it was. There was a Board of Commissioners resolution, which is noted in the MR, for that donation. There is an interest from the Pollyant Trail to relocate that gazebo for their use on the trail. And I'll turn it over to Larry and he can talk a little bit more about it.
Well, when we were at the animal shelter, one of our volunteers, unfortunately her father passed away and had a special dog, and she wanted to do something at the animal shelter, and we needed an outdoor meeting area, gazebo kind of thing, so that when we had events, we had somewhere to do that. And so she donated, as Art had just said, the gazebo, the construction of the gazebo, and so on, was fairly expensive. So when, you know, when I left the animal shelter, they just shut the whole facility down. I mean, it's over. Wow. So, and they built a new one, 15 million bucks. They waited for me to leave to do that. Anyhow, the so I hated to see that gazebo destroyed. I contacted the lady that originally donated it through Art. We came to an agreement, I hope, with your approval, that we can take that gazebo and move it to the Pollyant Trail at the juncture of the Iron Bell Trail, the Pollyant Trail, and the Paint Creek Trail. So that's the gist of what we would like to do.
Do you want to add anything?
I think Larry's got it covered.
Okay. Commissioner McGilvery.
So we have the permission of the people who donated it, the family?
Yes, we do.
To move it, correct?
There's actually a letter from the lady attached to the resolution, not only supporting but encouraging that we do this.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think it's great. It's is Pollyant Trail excited?
We really are. We're part of the Iron Bell Trail, which is Governor Schneider's project, and it, we've been doing a lot of work at the Clarkston Trailhead to make it very usable for our communities, and I think it would be a great asset. It would be a nice resting spot as people go from the Paint Creek to the Pollyant and onward. I'm very excited about it.
Good. Commissioner Cropper.
What do you anticipate the cost of removal and relocating is? Because it looks like at one point in time, somebody thought it was too much to move it over to our new facility, so they didn't choose to do it. So what have you come up with?
We're doing it with donations, donated contractor, Corrigan Oil, and so we don't have any. We're not going to incur any costs.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is similar like we do. We're for $1, we're giving them that, and they're going to assume all liability and all responsibility and all costs of moving and put it in a happy place.
Let it live on for another year.
Yes, that's great. So, any other questions? Let's call the roll.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Wyford.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Art.
Item number 9, last but not least, is the Circuit Court Facilities Planning and Engineering the Juvenile Intake Remodeling Project. Moved by Commissioner Dwyer, supported by Commissioner Jackson. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you want to introduce it and then? Sure. Yeah. I talked to Dave and, well, I talked to John yesterday, and he's going to get into explaining why this is important, so.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ed Joss, Manager of Facilities Planning and Engineering, here with my boss, Art Goldsworth, and a couple of folks from the court. This is a project project that is requested by the court. So I will let the court take the lead on this. I'll let these gentlemen introduce themselves, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the research.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is David Bilson, and with me is I'm the Deputy Court Administrator. Also with me for the first time is Scott Hamilton. He's our new manager of the Family Division, former juvenile court referee. So he's getting a good taste of the Board of Commissioners this morning. So we're asking for you to adopt this resolution to remodel the juvenile intake area. The juvenile intake area is located on the ground floor in the east wing. And if you can imagine, a juvenile intake area is kind of like our emergency room for family court. Anyone requesting a personal protection order or wants to terminate a personal protection order or modify it, they go to that area first in the juvenile intake division. They also handle delinquency cases, meaning kids that break the law, neglect cases, allegations that parents have either abused or neglected their children, and adoption cases. So they obviously deal with a lot. The goal of this remodel is twofold. One is to expand our lobby area. You can imagine, based on all those cases I just stated, our lobby area, especially on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which are our busier days, overflows. We just don't have enough space. And based on the population of those cases, sometimes those discussions in that lobby area can be rather heated. Also in that, the goal is to expand our juvenile courtrooms, the referee courtrooms. We have 4 on that floor, and they're just simply too small. You can imagine a referee is deciding whether a juvenile should be detained and locked up for a period of time, and literally that juvenile is maybe 2 to 3 feet in front of them, and the prosecutor is making that argument is literally about 1 or 2 feet in front of them. Also, right now, when we do have a child that's in custody or an adult in custody, the way that the Sheriff's Department has to bring them in is that they have to pass probably about 9 or 10 offices with employees and sometimes members of the public, which kind of creates a safety issue. If you approve and this remodel happens, the courtrooms will then be located further back. So when a Sheriff's Department employee is bringing them in, they'll go directly right into the courtroom and don't have to pass any offices.
From the outside south stairwell, okay, so it goes right from the parking lot where the van parks, straight up the stairs, 1 floor into where the hearing rooms are. Very direct.
With that, if I'll answer any questions that the commissioners have.
Commissioner Dwyer.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
To me, you really justified the need to expand and have better security, especially what's happening in this day and age.
Any other questions? Commissioner McGovern.
Question of Mr. Holsworth. This has been on the capital improvement project list for how long?
Was this the first year or the second year that this was in the CIP?
If I'm not mistaken, this is the first year. Yes, it was in the 2018 fiscal year plan. Yes.
So it would have been identified in 2017 as a need, then added to the 2018 CIP. We're at the very end of 2018, but we're still using the funds from the 2018 CIP.
Any questions?
I'm just curious as to what the need is. And I mean, if it's all of a sudden that, I mean, the PPOs haven't gone up that much to create a need for this, and I guess that's where I'm confused.
Regarding the need is, regarding the security issue that I kind of explained regarding it. So, you know, it's been a need for a while, I guess you can say. The overflow has been happening for a while, and it's, you know, and specifically it's time to address it.
It's long overdue down there. We've been anticipating doing something down there for years and years and years, but we just never had the opportunity with the additional space. What recently happened is the Oakland County Bar Association had an area over in the West Wing Extension in the office space, and they left. So that opened up that space, and it was kind of like a domino facilities if we could utilize that space. And they said yes, so we've got our data technology training area in there, which opened up a space for our word processing center to come over to the west wing, which opened up the space that we needed to create this additional waiting area space and space for the enhancement of the referee hearing room. So kind of a little domino effect, but that's why we've had this need for a long time, but it just, we finally had the opportunity to take advantage of it, that's all.
Yeah, it was fairly recent that we moved, I think towards the beginning of the year, that we moved that word processing. We were able to move them out of this space here, which then, like John said, freed up all the space that's needed to now move things around into a more secure setting. And then also, these hearing rooms now become much larger. At least 3 of the 4 do. Currently, they are very small. They don't have the capacity that they need, and there's a concern with ADA. So this will also allow us to accommodate, hopefully, more people and possibly those that need accommodations.
The referee hearing rooms down there are so small right now that they only allow for like 6 people to sit in them. And the attorneys for both sides have to use the same council table to speak to them. It's very difficult.
Commissioner Jackson.
Is there a way you could visibly demonstrate maybe how small it is in relation to this room?
Referee Hamilton? So.
They're 8 by 15. 8 feet by 15 feet. In a typical case, there is no room for a member of the public because it's occupied by the litigants and the attorneys. Mr. Bilson accurately described how close the referee is and the staff are to the people that we're serving. And they're delinquent children and parents who neglect and abuse their children, and we're removing them often for the very first time in these 8 by 15 foot hearing rooms. They will expand the size of the hearing rooms on the first floor to approximately 16 feet by 24 feet. So they will go from approximately 90 square feet to approximately 400 square feet. And we'll be able to do more, and we'll be able to do it safely.
And secondly, you named, I'm sorry, I just want to think, you said it's like the emergency room of family court. So like handling delinquencies, neglect where children are taken.
Correct.
On the spot.
First time, meaning the parents are finding out for the first time that the referee is informing them, you're here for a preliminary hearing, and one of the issues we need to decide is that whether your children stay home with you or they're removed.
So high stress, as well as adoptions that could be good in nature.
Correct. Well, actually, I wish they would. It's actually the bad part of adoptions, because what the referees are doing is that the mom and dad are coming in giving up their rights to that child so they can be adopted. The judges, which they deserve, are doing the good part later on. The referee is handling what's called the release of parental rights by those parents. Mom and dad are saying to the referee through Q&A, we're giving up our parental rights so this child could be adopted. So you can imagine those are very obviously highly emotional too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Clear pictures, a high
Sure.
charged environment.
Yeah.
Commissioner, this is 8 feet from the wall, and that is 15 feet from this wall. So that gives you a sense of how small the hearing rooms are.
That's it.
They're very, very narrow, very narrow.
And
So no one has ever been attacked, charged?
Well, referee Hamilton, as a former referee, can tell you that he has. So yes. So, and thankfully, the sheriff's deputies are sometimes there if the child's in custody, and that child was in custody. I remember it just like yesterday, because we shared. And that's the other thing too is that referee Hamilton and I shared courtrooms right next to each other. And when referee Hamilton did a hearing that got passionate, I could hear every single word. Meaning that my hearing during the same time either had to take a break or we just had to deal with it. With this project, hopefully that won't happen. But to answer specifically to your question, sure, yes, we've had issues before.
any other questions? And it's going to be ADA compliant?
Yes, we will meet the guidelines. I'm not sure that every room will be ADA. I know there is one.
There'll be
that's
ADA
smaller,
accessible?
But yes, that there will be ADA accessibility, which right now we have none.
Any other questions? And it is tight. I've gone on the tours, and the door hits you on the way to the seating, and you're right on top of the referees. It's, I was guessing that it was about 12 by 16 size of a big bedroom, and you're saying it's 8 by 15. That's tight. So. And the whole intake area was always on top of each other, and so now that you've moved some of the data processing out of there, I can see how the space opened up. So, any other questions from what I asked? Let's call the roll.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Wypert.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. Communications, seeing none, seeing no other business, we will move on to adjourn this meeting.